All right, guys. So, I want to talk to you about. I'm just want to give you a heads up real quick. I am tired as shit, and today's one of those days. I'm moving my camera. Sorry, it's going to be freaking annoying for a second. So the last 3 months have been hell. I don't mean hell like hard life, and and my baby mama number 9 got pregnant and again and by another baby daddy and 10 I don't mean any of that shit. What I mean is that it's been hard as hell because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, and I mean that in the sense of you've got a personal belief here, and I mean me, I say you, but me, a lot of cognitive dissonance because I'm getting more and more in touch with my introverted feeling function as I get older, and I'm starting to realize that I said this in another video, but I'm going to say it again, it's who I really am, is the way that my values are. I'm not always aware of them. Sometimes it's hard for me to vocalize them, but I'm making this video because there's several points I want to hit, and I'm probably going to go on a rant. And I say this because when it comes to these values, it hits a very soft spot in me. It hits a spot where I feel absolutely irritated. I feel absolutely bothered by some of the things I've witnessed and seen lately. I've seen, and I feel just to this point where things need to be discussed. So I'm going to discuss things with myself. I may be distracted by my phone like I did for a second here. So point being is let's narrow this down. First off, I want to cover this though. I do want to cover this point. I did a video earlier and my phone ran out of video space because I was going cheap and I bought the 16 gig, but that doesn't matter. So point being is this video I want to talk about a point first, and then you can turn off the video after this. But this is critical. What I am absolutely sick of, absolutely sick and tired of hearing, is how dominant introverted feeler types are wimps, pansies, rollovers, don't like conflict. They're just feeling oriented, and they just want to hug everybody, and they want to smoke a peace pipe and all kinds of bullshit. And you got to remember, there is more to personality than just your stupid Myers-Briggs test. There is so much more to personality than your dumbass Enneagram, than your dumbass Socionics, than your dumbass Myers-Briggs. There is more to personalities. There's variables, there's belief systems, there's life events, there's values they were raised on, there's conditions that cause a person to develop in one way or another, there's troubles, there's relationship problems, there's stresses, there's all kinds of factors that make people people. Okay? So if I hear this one more time about an introverted feeler dominant being a rollover or a pushover or stupid or incapable of accomplishing anything, I swear to you, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, not like permanently, but I'm not going to think straight for a brief moment. Now, I may not reply to your stupid comment about how a dominant introverted feeler is that way. So, with that being said, is if you look at any official Myers-Briggs material, you're not going to see the crap that you see on the internet about dominant introverted feelers. You know what? Screw this. I'm going to pull this out real quick because I'm sick of this crap. I'm really, really sick and tired of reading this crap. So, hold on. Let me find this crap. You're probably thinking, okay, you said crap like 12 times, right? Yeah, I did. Okay, so, yeah. Now this particular Myers-Briggs material says the INFP is the values-driven leader. Okay, leader. The key word is freaking leader here, not weakling, not wimpy, not can't confront people, can't do that crap. Now, listen to this. Their motivation is adding to human understanding, sharing knowledge and enthusiasm for deep passions, upholding meaning and ideals. Does that say anything about being a pansy? Does that say anything about being a huggy, feely, blah, 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 whatever? No, it does not. Okay? They focus on compassion. Why? Why did they focus on compassion as a general strength? Okay, you got to think about this. Think about feeling as a function in itself. Okay, so feeling is a function. What that means is you make decisions. Feeling is a judging function, which means it's how you make decisions. What is the feeling function? It doesn't mean that you're actually feeling. It doesn't mean that people who don't preference feeling don't have emotions. Because I guarantee you, my emotions run deeper than a lot of feeling preference people. I'm sorry, they do. Like, deal with it. Suck it up. Okay, my feelings run so complex. They're very, very deep. Sometimes I stress out because I feel like my feelings are a bottomless pit of explorational hell, and I can't figure out why I feel a certain way, and it's very sophisticated, okay? And my passions are run deep, and they emanate when I talk, and they come out, and my passion just is powerful, and that's the feeling method that I get from this. So keep that in mind, because feeling is not about your emotion. Okay, there are thinkers who can be butthurt, just like any other type. They can be butthurt. They can, I'm offended and whatever. Thinking types can be that way. So it's not about how someone's maturity or immaturity. It's not about that. Okay, so feeling is a function. Now remember, it has an orientation or an attitude. Okay, so how do you direct your feeling? Do you direct your feeling internally? Or do you... Sorry. I'm tired as hell. Or do you extrovert your feeling and you put it outward? Okay, so now it's a decision-making function. So do I make feelings by reflecting inward and weighing out against my internal value system, or do I make decisions looking at external values and make decisions based on external values and external value systems? Words like right, wrong, good, bad, worthless. Those are all feeling judgments. This person is worthless. You're not going to see me say that much because I don't make decisions like that. I don't say people are worthless. I say this person's good in this area, not so good in this area. This person can improve in this area. This person needs work in this area. This person sucks in this area. And this is why. Here's the cause. Here's the effect. Here's the plan of action. Here's how we fix it. Okay, this is not person's entire encompassing worth. They're worthless. Okay, if I say that, I must really think you're worthless. And if I think you're worthless, it shouldn't be a matter anyway, because my opinion does not affect you. So grow a pair and get over it. So with that being said, remember, feelings of function are either extroverts or introverts. And if you're feeling introverts, what that means is you make a decision by weighing the circumstances or the variables of the circumstance against your internal value system. Okay? Internal value system. It has nothing to do with the external value system. So if you use introverted feeling, it is very likely that you have some exploratory area in extroverted feeling too. So you're using this function, you're able to it has a preference for introversion, but you don't completely ignore extroversion unless you just haven't used this function and you just have no ability with it whatsoever. Okay, so this feeling has a natural orientation in one way or another. What is more natural to you? More natural to me is introverted feeling. So when I make a feeling-based judgment, which I do sometimes, and it drains the crap out of me, but when I do, it is by me looking at my value system and making a decision based on how I would feel, me personally, how I would feel if I were in another person's shoes. This is one of the reasons why I call introverted feeling a empathy function. It's very empathetic. It can put itself in other people's shoes, but you're really putting yourself in other people's shoes, and you would look at it like, I would feel this way. Now, here's where it can backfire. With introverted feeling, you may look at a situation and go, I would have never been butthurt by that, so therefore, you may have never, or I would have never been, I would have never made a decision like that if I were in that person's shoes. So therefore, or I would never be hurt if I knew that I made this decision by sitting in this. I would never affect these people. Therefore, I can make that decision clearly because it's not going to affect these people. Because if I were in their shoes, it wouldn't affect me. Now, see, that's referencing my internal framework of feeling-based judgments, okay? That is, it wouldn't affect me. So it can be mistaken here because if it hasn't built the archetypes that are based on your feeling preferences, that are based on what you feel as a person in someone else's shoes, and you haven't built that framework, then it's very likely that you can make a misjudgment with your feeling preference. You can make a misjudgment. Whereas extroverted feeling is going to pick up on the disharmony between people outside of itself. So you're not making decisions based on how you would feel if you were in someone else's shoes, but actually how that person feels in front of you based on cues, based on emotional. So extroverted feeling is going to pick up on the actual emotion, whereas introverted feeling is going to consider what it would be like if you were in that person's shoes. Extroverted feeling can be much more accurate because it's attuned to extroversion, therefore it's focusing on things outside of itself, outside of self. So you're going to look at things in a manner which can be more real. Extroverted feeling can be more accurate when it comes to, now the keyword can be, more accurate when it comes to picking up real-time emotion. Okay? Whereas introverted feeling, if it's built really well, okay, and with dominant introverted feelers, it generally is, as long as they've developed effectively, if introverted feeling is built really well, then you pretty much have built most of your archetypes in order to determine feeling-based decisions. And then you go, I would never do that because I know that it would affect here. I know that it would affect there. It would affect here. It would affect here. That crosses my values. It's absolutely morally wrong, etc., etc. It's not going to happen. Okay. Now that we got that orientation figured out, let me talk to you about the differences in these two functions, and then I'm going to be done with this INFP crap, ISFP, INFP crap. Okay, so the differences in these two functions, introverted feeling versus extroverted feeling. Extroverted feeling usually gets its cues and builds its value system based on external cues. So the value system is constructed by groups of people, parents, whatever, and you don't do it because you feel like it's right or wrong, because someone has told you that plenty of times. So here's an example. Not that it's going to work this way all the time, because you remember, we still use both feeling. So keep that in mind. But here's an example. Society determines that it's okay now to punch random people in the face. I would love that, by the way. But society determines that it's okay now. And extroverted feelers would like, well, if you're punching random in the people in the face, then it's beneficial to the remainder of society by punching the few people in the face that need to be punched in the face. I could see how that would work. Whereas introverted feeling would like, man, that would suck to get punched in the face. Because if I got punched in the face, screw that. No, I'm not going to do that. So they're looking at it from what it would be like if they were in someone else's shoes, whereas extroverted feeling is generally picking up on the emotion of the entire crowd or the entire group and figuring out, okay, most people would benefit from this, and I can see how that would benefit a lot of people in this area. Now, remember, I know I didn't finish that thought, but remember this. This is the most important part, is that you're never going to come, two extroverted feelers doesn't mean that they're going to come to the same conclusion. That is the dumbest crap. I don't even know who says that, but it's the dumbest crap I've read on the internet to date. Is that if you're extroverted feeler, then you're going to come to the same conclusion here. You're going to come to the same conclusion here. You may have an extroverted feeler who believes in the punch in the face law, and then you may have an extroverted feeler that absolutely thinks it's wrong because they're catering to a group that is more important to them. And this is where the introverted feeling comes in. Why is that group more important to them? Because they believe in this internal value system. Because saying an extroverted feeler doesn't have an internal value system is like saying that, 8 of the 16 types don't have their own values. That's not true. They do. But they don't necessarily make decisions based on those values, and they're more willing to sacrifice those values to serve a group that they believe or respect or cater to. That group could be their family. An example would be, like, somebody's in a family where you have, like an introverted feeler may be told 100 times that don't, sit a certain way at a table, but if an introverted feeler believes there may be a better way to do it, that is more coherent with their values, you can tell them a million times and they're not going to compromise. They're just believe in an absolute right or wrong. Whereas extroverted feeling is more interested in what is benefiting the people outside of self. Introverted feeling is more about focusing on the self. Okay, now, keep that in mind, because there's another cue here I want to talk about with this instead. ISFPs and INFPs. Now that we kind of got this stupid introverted and extroverted feeling out of the way, you've got to understand one thing, and there's plenty of more information on extroverted feeling and introverted feeling that is correct on the internet. How do you know if it's correct? Because if it sounds biased, it's probably bullshit. If it sounds actually like something that makes perfect sense, and it makes INFPs or ISFPs or ESFJs or the other extroverted feeling type, ENFJs, if it makes them sound like they're, not in a box, and it makes them sound like it's probably the right stuff, if it's more objective about how these functions operate. So, remember, extroverted feeling and introverted feeling do not look the same to the outer world. And an introverted feeler, you can't really see it until you see it, because they're not extroverting that feeling a lot. Okay, so where did the stereotype come from that INFPs and ISFPs are softies and they're blah, 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 because they make decisions based on this feeling judgment. It's a value judgment. No, what they're actually looking for is harmony with their internal value system. So they want to build a world around them that resonates their internal value system. So with that being said, you may have an INFP who's a total softie. That's true. But you also may have an INFP who has a value system that doesn't value that crap. Okay? But they believe in harmony and still creating an environment which they believe is beneficial to society. Okay, so I want you to think about this. As I look through here, they're very focused on what they believe, and it's hard to define these introverted functions because it can vary so greatly from individual to individual. But the thing about the INFP, that one of the biggest things about the ISFP or the INFP is they will stand firmly on their value systems, stubbornly on their value systems, even against all opposition. They feel like those things cannot be crossed. And I recognize this in myself a lot. When I have a value that's crossed, I do not give two shits what anyone or everyone around me has to say about if I'm wrong. Because I know that to me there's a governing right and wrong that's above what society expects. And when I truly believe it's wrong, it's not going anywhere, then it's not going anywhere. That being said, off subject, but still, okay, I'm tired, I'm bouncing all over the place, I'm sorry. Off subject, FI and NI can be very stubborn. NI can be very fixated on what's going to happen, and FI is going to be very fixated on, these value systems. So you get the stubbornness that comes with these NTJ types. NJs in general, but NTJ specifically are very, very, very stubborn, and because they have these fixations and values that they absolutely cannot believe could be crossed. And when my value systems are crossed, I don't get upset, okay, because I don't make decisions. My emotional decisions are not contingent on my values being crossed, but I absolutely do not agree with it, and I will make it known that I do not agree with that. Okay, so now you got to remember. I'm sorry, I just whatever. Now you got to remember this. Okay, so I know INFPs. I know a few of them. They're quite different from each other. One's softer than the other, but they're both pretty jaded. They're both pretty jaded. At first look, they're not the huggy-dovey, I'm going to hug you and hold you and keep you in my arms for the rest of my life, and let's play some 80s music while we dance and sing the night away. Not going to happen. Okay, so these INFPs and ISFPs, I know people of each type, they're not that way. The people that are more that way are going to be the extroverted feelers because they're catering and accommodating to emotions. Okay? They're accommodating you. They're trying to make you feel comfortable because they're extroverting feeling. You got to remember, they're picking up on your feeling, or they believe they're picking up on your feeling based on cues and signals that they think are accurate, and generally they are, but not always. They're picking up on this. Empirical feeling data. Essentially, your feelings, your moods, your values, and they're trying to cater to that. They're trying, if they care about you, that is. If they don't care about you, then they're not going to cater squat. So don't even worry about that. But they want to accommodate. They want to make sure you're okay. They want to make sure you're doing fine. They want to do that. And that's extroverted feeling. With introverted feeling, you can't generally tell their feeling types. You can't. Because their feeling is directed inward. You don't know what the hell is going through their head. And a lot of times they look like thinking types. They tend to be INFPs, and mainly INFPs tend to be very, 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 very theoretical and analytical, and they tend to analyze their value systems a lot, and they want to understand it. They don't want to change it because they think they know it's right or wrong, but they tend to wonder why they feel this way, why they feel that way, and it's not going to change. Whereas ISFPs, they do it in a very similar way, but also with a very different way, because they have a more sensing-oriented approach, which is a whole different subject. I don't give a crap about that right now. So you have to understand that the introverted feeling function doesn't extrovert this lazy, avoid confrontation thing. I'm going to roll over and die thing. It doesn't do that. So I'm sick and tired of people doing this crap and saying they're incapable. American society values ESTJ, and it devalues INFP. Okay, ESTJ being the primary type that society values because, you've got the extroversion, you've got the sensing, so they're focused on the facts and what's real here and now. You've got the thinking function, which everybody thinks is all about success and career orientation. You got the J, they're on time, they're punctual, they do things right, they move in a structured order, they make plans, they fulfill the plans, they move forward, they TE all the way through life, and everybody's like, oh, so glad that you got valedictorian, you're such a great person. Oh my God, so glad that you got a career, you're a doctor now, yay, let's give you a hug, you're so awesome, you're an ESTJ, you know what, I love you. You're so great. I mean, you're making a lot of money. You're making your little measly your big whopping 6-figure salary, even though it's measly to me, but it's a big, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you because you spent 20 years in school and you got 25 degrees and, you spent a ridiculous amount of money on an education that is completely worthless because at the end of the day, you can't wipe your own ass. So, not that ESTJs can't wipe their own ass. That's not the point. The point is, it's really, really, really simple. That's why society values that, because the introverted sensing is so focused on what worked in the past. Okay, what works? And it's true, education works. It gets you a job, it gets you that kind of thing. And education is a big subject. It's a big problem, but it's also a big subject. Education, education, education. So that's what has worked historically. So why not do it again? Why not do it again? What they're not looking at is they're looking at present realities and fact data. It doesn't mean they're never looking forward either. ESTJs are fully capable of looking forward. It's not what I'm saying. It's their natural preference to go to what they know works. Okay? Now, an ESTJ who has developed their intuition can look at it and go, if I could do this, if I do this, here's what could happen. It could result in this. It could also result in this. It could also result in this. What is the most feasible, reliable fact? What is the most feasible, reliable outcome? ESTJs are known to do that. Whereas an ENTJ goes, the hell is all this crap? Why am I doing all this useless crap? I don't need to do all this junk. I don't need to be this guy, and this guy for the rest of society. I don't need this crap. What I do need is to break the system, make my own, because I have a vision in my head where I want to go, and I'm just going to do it. I don't care what anybody else thinks. Okay, that's all about Enneagram 2, but an ENTJ is looking at that outcome that they've made in their head, a linear path of where they need to go, and it may not involve the education system at all, because it doesn't matter what worked in the past. It's about what today is and going forward. That's their natural preference. Now, if they don't reflect on the past, they can make some serious errors. Just like if the ESTJ doesn't look forward, they can make serious errors. So there's no better type between the two. Anyway, this is way off the INFP thing, but you got to realize that INFPs, I'm going back to the INFP again. You got to realize that the INFP is a much just misunderstood type by society, and they are not pansies. They can be, just like any other type. They are not easily butthurt, but they can be, just like any other type. They can make great leaders. Like I said, they're called the values-driven leader. They lead organizations by natural preference if they're operating in their natural preference, and by adding to human understanding, sharing knowledge, and enthusiasm for deep passions, and upholding meaning and ideals. You know you have an introverted feeling friend when things are generally very, very, very deep between you two. Okay? Because they really, you feel understood. Whereas an extroverted feeling person is not necessarily trying to solve your problem, but they're trying to accommodate you so you feel comfortable enough in solving your own problem, which is sometimes necessary. Whereas an introverted feeling person doesn't necessarily want to solve your problem, but you feel like you're understood. And both types, like I said, extroverted feeling or introverted feeling, are capable of both, but this is from a natural standpoint, what comes most natural to types. Okay, so Enthusiasm for deep passions. Deep passions. Introverted functions are deep. Extroverted functions are quick, fast, and broad. Introversions are deep, laser-penetrating functions that are just very, very sophisticated because they're laced with subjectivity. So they take a lot longer to process. So you got to remember... Okay, I just had something screaming in my ear. Okay, so they want to make sure, depending on what their values are, and sometimes you're going to read stuff on the internet that's going to say like, oh, they value compassion, and that's if they value compassion, okay? If an INFP had a rough upbringing, I'm telling you, they're probably going to struggle with compassion. They may have their own values that have something to do with something else, but it may not contain compassion. So don't stop categorizing this bullshit. It's imperative that you guys understand that there's more to personalities than just Myers-Briggs. Okay, there's more to it. More to any of that. All right. Please give ISFPs and INFPs a chance. That's what this video is about. I'm sick of it. That people just think they're weak. People think they're a horrible type to be. Everybody's like, oh, I'm a feeling type, dang it. I make judgments off my feelings. No, sometimes being around INFPs really helped me because I don't even know why I feel a certain way, or I am feeling something and I explain it to an INFP and they can put themselves in my shoes and they go, man, I know exactly what you're talking about and here's why. Here's why you feel the way you do. And they explain it to me, not in a necessarily logical way, but in a way that I feel understood. I'm like, dang, that is exactly right. You got it, man. You figured it out, like why this has been plaguing me for so long. So they're bringing out and they're understanding my inferior function. So get that and understand that their dominant function is they prefer to live in empathy, understanding and relating to people. That's their goal. That's their primary function. That's what introverted feeling does, is it gets in their shoes and it understands people, which may draw compassion. It may draw compassion because they're making decisions on how it will affect other people. But only people they give a crap about, okay? If they don't give a crap about you, then they're not going to worry about what decisions they make that impact you because they're judging and making decisions based on what their own internal value system is, okay? So that's absolutely critical, and it's absolutely critical that you understand that because these types, these people of these types are typically not expressive of their type because they feel probably misjudged or misunderstood. And these are the types that are good best to understand you. So stop oppressing them. Okay. That aside, there's a million things going through my head. I'm going to end this video because it probably is going to be like 3 hours long if I don't right now before I start another rant. I've already kind of ranted on this and I bounced between subjects, so I truly apologize. But I was able to keep it under 30 minutes, so I'm happy about that. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching. Sorry for snapping, but it's got to be done. INFPs, like every other type, are just as valuable to society and just as valuable, if not some of the best friends. INFPs, I'm narrowing down INFPs, but it's really ISFPs and INFPs. I'm narrowing it down to a point where they can make some really good friends because they can understand you if they're developed. Naturally, they make those decisions and then can help you bring out some functions that you may be struggling with. Okay, so, man, I really want to go into this other subject. I really do, but no. Okay.